Welcome to the video, and today we're going to be talking about my experience with the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. Now, I bought this camera a little over a year ago, and I've been using it almost every day since then. And yes, I know there is a newer version of this camera, but most of the features and things I'll talk about today are the same for the new model that came out, other than the size and the battery, which have been improved with the new camera. Okay, enough about that one. Let's talk about this camera itself. Because it's one generation old, it's selling for about $1,700, which for what it is a very good price. I bought it new for $2,000 and have really enjoyed using the camera. There is no autofocus, which I hadn't really had a problem with until I had autofocus with my other cameras. And if you're trying to film yourself, autofocus is pretty necessary. So I would say unless you have an external monitor to view yourself or someone else to set focus for you, this is not the camera for you if you want to film yourself. Now, if you do have an external monitor or someone to help you, this is an amazing camera for the price and really can't be beat. I'm currently recording this at 6K RAW, 29.97 FPS at 12:1 compression ratio. Now, that is the most compressed this camera will go for B-RAW, and of course you can choose smaller compression ratios if you want your footage to look better. But I found that 8:1 or even 12:1 compression ratios look very good. One more downside is the file sizes are huge, so you have to take that into consideration. One common thing is to get a Samsung T5 or T7 external SSD and mount it on the top for recording, and that's what I've been using a lot, and that works really well. You can also use CFast cards and SD cards in this camera. It has an EF mount for lenses, which is a very common mount. It's not RF, so if you want to use RF lenses, you'll have to get an adapter, but there are a lot of good EF lenses out there. I'm using the Sigma 18-35 f1.8 right now, and is a great lens for the money. I believe it's around $700, and it pairs really well with the Pocket 6K. Also, the 5-inch touchscreen on the back is great for setting focus and for using the camera, as well as the menu system. The menu system in this camera is one of the best I've ever seen. It's so intuitive and easy to use. The I/O is very nice and standard. It has a 3.5mm jack for recording audio and one for playing back audio through headphones, an HDMI port for sending out video. It only outputs 1080p video, which is kind of a bummer considering that it is a 6K camera, but is perfectly acceptable for live production. Beneath that, there's the USB-C port for recording onto. It says that it can charge the camera, but I've never gotten that to work properly. There is also a 12-volt DC power plug next to that for charging the battery or using wall power, and a mini XLR port with phantom power, so you can use nice professional high-end microphones without the need for an external recorder. It does have two pretty good built-in microphones, but I would say that you would only want to use those for reference audio, but for that they are pretty decent. Now, there are also 3 programmable buttons on the top, which are very nice, so you can set them to be like a clean feed or show you your zebras or focus assist, and that's nice to have as well. This camera can also take still images, and I would say that as far as cinema cameras, they look pretty good. You obviously will get better pictures out of a photo camera like this R7 right here. This will take better photos than the Pocket 6K, but the video out of this is not as good. As far as stills goes, it does take a 26 megapixel DNG still, so it's pretty easy to edit in Lightroom. Now, one more problem with this camera is the battery. The battery that came with it, I only get 20 to 40 minutes on, which is not very good. So if you get this camera, I would highly recommend getting an external V-mount battery underneath it or on the side or something to extend the battery life of this camera. I have the core battery pack underneath this, which gives me about 3 hours of runtime, which is pretty good. And I can also power an external monitor or a phone or anything else out of the other ports that it has. There is also a tally light on the front of the camera, so if you're recording yourself, you can see if it's recording or not, which is very nice to have. Now, a couple of the things with this camera that are downsides, such as the battery, have been improved on with the 2nd generation of this, and one more thing that has been improved is the mounting points. There is only one mounting point on the bottom, so if you put it on a tripod, sometimes it could slide, so that's nice about the new generation, is that it has the 2 mounting points on the bottom, so it won't slide around, and it has the tilt-up screen, which is great to have if you're using it on a gimbal, or if you're just needing to get your camera low down and you can't see the screen itself. The new models also have viewfinders, And the 6K Pro has built-in ND filters. And I have used the Broadcast G2 before, and that camera has built-in ND filters, and it's so nice to be able to just click a button or scroll a wheel to have ND filters. So if you could afford it, I would say that Pocket 6K Pro would probably be the best option, but the 6K, 6K G2, and Pocket 4K are all great options. I have also used the Pocket 4K along with the 6K, and everything about it is very similar. It just has a micro four thirds mount instead of a EF mount, and it has a smaller sensor, which isn't really big of an issue considering the price point. Now you can get a speed booster or an adapter for that camera and still use EF glass, which is another great option. Now that camera starts at $1,295, which is a really great price considering the features that it has. One more thing that I forgot to touch on is that this camera can record ProRes and Blackmagic RAW, which is nice if you like to use ProRes more often. Now I always use Blackmagic RAW because I like the flexibility of RAW, and it looks very good. Now, real quick before we end this video, let's compare the image quality between the Blackmagic Pocket 6K and the Canon R7, which are both around the same price point and both shoot 4K. So let's switch out cameras and see how that looks. Okay, now we're filming on the Canon EOS R7, and this is what that looks like. I'm shooting with the same lens, same microphone, and have all the same settings. So I would say that this is a pretty even comparison. Now something I noticed right away is that my ISO is a lot lower with the R7, so we'll see how that looks. The Blackmagic does have dual native ISO, so it will look better in lower lighting conditions than cameras that do not have that. If you have any questions about any of the gear I use on this channel, leave a comment below and I'll get an answer to you. Anyway, that's it for this video, and thank you for watching.